I have the full prompt and source content. The task is clear. Write a 700-line TTS recap script in American English following the exact format specified. No files, no markdown, just plain text output in the chat. Let me write it now. What would you do if you died with one last unanswered question, and then woke up young enough to ask it again? Because young Jian did exactly that. And his answer shattered everything he thought he knew about the woman he spent 50 years loving. Let's rewind to the very end first, because that's where this story actually begins. Yang Jian is 70 years old, lying in a bed, breathing his last breaths, surrounded by the children and grandchildren he built his life around. And beside him sits his wife of 50 years, Lee Shia, cold and distant as she has always been. Not once in 5 decades did she say she loved him. Not once did she reach for his hand first, or smile at him the way a wife smiles at a husband she chose. So with what little strength he has left, Yang Jian forces out one last question. He looks at her and asks, in all of our 50 years together, did you ever love me, even for a single day? She hesitates. And in that hesitation he already has his answer. He doesn't wait for her to speak. He looks around at his descendants, standing in the hazy light of that room, and he says his final words, if we could do it all over again, I would never want to love you again. Then he closes his eyes, loses consciousness, and against every law of the universe wakes up. Not in that hospital room, not in that old tired body. He wakes up in a high school classroom, 80 years old, 50 years of memories crammed into a teenager's skull. Yang Jian is reborn, and his very first thought, simple, final. He is never under any circumstances getting involved with Lee Shia again. Now listen before you think this is just a typical second chance romance where the guy wins the girl. You need to understand who Yang Jian actually was in his past life. He wasn't some hidden genius or secret heir waiting to be discovered. He was the dead last slacker, sitting in the back row by the window, the guy who played basketball instead of studying, and barely scraped his way into a third-rate college. Meanwhile, Lee Shia was everything he wasn't. She was the famous genius beauty of first high top-tier grades, stunning looks, and on track to become an internationally recognized master violinist. The kind of girl everyone whispered about in the halls. So how did these two end up married? Business. The Lee family's company hit a rough patch, and they came to the Yang family with a proposal, a marriage alliance in exchange for a business partnership. Yang Jian's dad happily agreed. Yang Jian himself was more than willing. Lee Shia was beautiful, sensible, accomplished what wasn't to love. But here's the thing nobody told him at the time. Lee Shia already had someone she loved, a childhood friend she had grown up with, someone her heart had chosen long before any business deal was ever made. Her family tore that apart and handed her to Yang Jian like a card played in a negotiation. So she came into that marriage already broken, already resentful, and no matter how good Yang Jian was to her, no matter how much he gave, how hard he tried, she never smiled at him, never warmed up, never let him in. He poured 50 years into a woman who, as far as he knew, never loved him back. And now he's 18 again, with all of that weight still sitting on his chest. So his plan for this second life is actually pretty well thought out. He's not going to blow up the business partnership between the two, because a few years down the line, the Lee family's company is going to grow into something massive, and the Yang family stands to gain a lot from that alliance. He just doesn't need Lee Shia to be part of the deal. He doesn't need the Lee family to sell their daughter to him. What he needs, what he's burning to do, is study. 50 years of knowledge, business experience, and accumulated regret, all compressed into a teenager's brain with 3 months until the college entrance exams. Not getting into a top-tier university was his biggest regret from his past life. He's not letting that happen again. So Yang Jian, the guy who never cracked a book unless forced to start studying like a man possessed, his classmates don't know what to do with this information. They corner him after class, genuinely disturbed. Yang Jian, you don't play basketball anymore. You don't even go to the internet cafe. Are you possessed or something? He doesn't explain, he just studies. But the universe, as it turns out, has a sense of humor. About half a month to his new regimen, his dad calls and drops a casually catastrophic piece of news. Come home early after school. We have guests coming for dinner. Oh, and bring gifts, something a girl might like. Yang Jian knows exactly who's coming. In his past life, he'd racked his brain trying to impress Lee Shia at this exact dinner. Plushies, crafts, handmade things, only for her to look at everything he bought and say, coldly, childish. Being with someone like you, I can't even imagine how miserable my life will be. That memory still stings. So this time Yang Jian does not try. He goes to a street stall and buys the most aggressively childish toys he can find, RC race cars, Bobby dolls, the kind of stuff you'd get for a 3-year-old. He hauls these massive bags back home, walks into the living room where everyone is gathered, and just dumps them on the floor. One of the RC car wheels snaps off on impact. He dusts off his hands and deadpans to the aloof girl sitting across from him. Here, my dad told me to get you a gift. I was short on time, so I grabbed these from a street stall. His dad is so furious he grabs a spatula, but Yang Jian doesn't flinch. He lived to 70 in his past life. His dad isn't even 40 right now. Technically, Yang Jian is the elder in this room. He flops onto the sofa, crosses his legs, and uses the exact tone he once used to scold his own grandchildren. "You're a grown adult and you don't act like one at all. What a disgrace." Everyone in the room freezes. His dad, Lee Shia's parents, Lee Shia herself, all of them just stare. His dad scrambles to do damage control, laughing nervously, explaining that they always joke around like this. "Clearly you're not outsiders." Lee Shia's parents beam. Lee Shia does not. Yang Jian walks up to her and says flatly, "Since you don't like the gifts I bought, I'll just pack them up and play with them myself." He reaches out to gather the toys. And then something happens that stops him cold. Lee Shia reaches out and snatches a Barbie doll right out of his hands. And she smiles. Not a polite smile. Not a forced smile. A real one, warm and genuine and completely out of nowhere. She says, "I love it." Yang Jian is absolutely stunned. In 50 years he had never once seen her smile at him like that. He stands there with his mouth closed, trying to figure out if this is actually Lee Shia, or if someone has taken over her body. He shakes it off. Doesn't matter, he's not going down this road again. He deadpans, "Sorry, I bought that Barbie for myself. The rest are yours." He fully expects that to end things, expected her to toss the toys aside and storm off. Instead, she holds on to them, still smiling. Dinner passes with Yang Jian saying approximately nothing to Lee Shia. He knows she's resisting this marriage in her heart. He knows she has someone she loves. He is happy to let her go. Late that night, as the Lee family finally gets ready to leave, Lee Shia suddenly remembers she left her backpack on the sofa. Yang Jian's dad makes him go get it. He brings it out, shoves it into her hands and turns to leave. And Lee Shia looks at him peacefully, quietly and says, "Thank you." That's it, just 2 words. But to Yang Jian it lands like a punch to the face. In both of his lifetimes combined, he cannot remember her ever saying thank you to him. He doesn't react. He keeps his expression cold, ignores her and goes straight back to his room. Behind him he can hear his dad desperately apologizing to her parents. "He's just in a bad mood lately. Please don't let this affect the families." Yang Jian closes his door and breathes. One dinner down. If he can just stay out of her way from here on out, everything will be fine. He really believes that. He believes it right up until the next morning at school, when the homeroom teacher steps to the front of the class and Zosun's new transfer student. And in walks Lee Shia. Yang Jian cannot believe it. She transferred. She transferred to his school, with the college entrance exams 3 months away. The teacher, practically vibrating with excitement, tells her to sit up front next to the class president, the top-ranked student in the whole school. Lee Shia's grades are the stuff of legend. If she focuses, she could take first place in the entire city. The teacher wants to keep her in prime conditions, but Lee Shia shakes her head. She walks past the front rows, past the middle rows, all the way to the back. She stops at Yang Jian's desk, holds out her hand and says with a polite smile, "We meet again. Can I sit next to you?" The classroom goes silent. The teacher rushes over, practically panicking, pointing out that Yang Jian is the worst student in the class and that she shouldn't waste her potential sitting next to someone like him. Lee Shia smiles at the teacher. She thanks him for his concern, and then she sits down next to Yang Jian anyway. Yang Jian stares at her. He sees that face, that familiar, high and mighty, unreadable face, and 50 years of marriage flash through his mind like a warning signal. He reaches out and blocks the empty seat with his arm. "I'm used to sitting alone. We only met once last night. Go find another seat. I don't want to drag down your grades." Dead silence falls over the entire classroom. Nobody, not a single person in that room, expected the school's biggest slacker to reject a girl like Lee Shia. Lee Shia blinks. For just a second, something flickers across her face, surprise, maybe even a flash of hurt. Then her expression snaps back into that familiar, cold, imperious look. She slams her bag onto the desk, swats his arm away, and sits down. "You don't own this seat. I'll sit wherever I want." Yang Jian recognizes that face. He dealt with that exact attitude for 50 years. Seeing it now makes his stomach turn. He slams his own book on the desk, making her flinch. "Fine, sit wherever the hell you want, I can't stop you." Then he packs up his things, grabs his basketball from under the desk, walks past the trash cans at the back of the room, and claims the empty desk, next to the garbage, the one that smells like every lunch period that came before it. He shoves the junk aside, dumps his bag down, waves to the other slackers in the back row, and walks right out of class. The homeroom teacher is screaming behind them, but they're already gone. Yang Jian plays basketball all morning, and for a little while, life feels manageable. After their last game at noon, sweaty and out of breath, Yang Jian's about to go grab an ice-cold drink when a figure steps in front of him and pushes a bottle of water into his hands. Room temperature water. You shouldn't drink ice water right after exercising. His teammates lose it, grinning and elbowing each other. Look at that, Yang Jian's got someone bringing him water. Room temperature too. So thoughtful. Yang Jian shoots them a look that could stop a clock, then turns to Lee Shia. His expression goes flat. No thanks, I prefer ice water. And then he says the thing he never said in his past life. Lee Shia, forget the arranged marriage. I know you have a childhood sweetheart, you really like him, and I have absolutely zero interest in you. There's no reason for us to get to know each other. He hands the water back. I'll talk to my dad. It won't affect the business between our families. This is best for both of us. Then he grabs his basketball and walks away. And for a moment it actually feels like freedom. He gets to the bus stop, ready to head home, and he's already mentally running through study plans, when footsteps come pounding toward him from behind. Lee Shia catches up, face pale, grabbing his arm with a grip that's a lot stronger than it looks. He's about to shake her off, when she pins him against the bus stop sign, with both hands on his shoulders, and says with something sharp and emotional in her voice, Yang Jian, don't think you're the only one who got reborn. Everything stops. Yang Jian's mind goes completely perfectly blank. She was reborn too. Lee Shia doesn't give him a second to process it. Yang Jian, I am your wife. In our past life you never once raised your voice at me. But in this life, how many times have you yelled at me since yesterday? Tears are building in her eyes, her jaw is tight. Yang Jian stares at her. Everything she has done since yesterday, the smile over the Barbie doll, the room temperature water, the way she snacks to him, despite being rejected in front of the whole class. Suddenly it reads completely differently. This is not the Lee Shia from his past life. Or maybe it is but a version of her that came back knowing everything she lost. He doesn't know what to make of it, and honestly, he doesn't want to. He exhales slowly. Lee Shia, since you've been reborn too, that's actually perfect. In this life, I won't get in the way of you and your childhood sweetheart, and you don't need to force yourself to be with me just to help your family's business. He takes a breath. You were a business queen in our past life. With everything you know now, you don't need my family's help. You can achieve greatness on your own. He pauses. After all, he had loved this woman for 50 years. Letting go still hurt even knowing what he knows. Goodbye, Lee Shia. He turns to leave. And right on cue, because the universe clearly enjoys piling on, a loud scooter pulls up to the curb. The guy riding it yanks off his sunglasses, spots Lee Shia and grins. Hey Shia, I'm here to pick you up. Why the heck did you transfer schools? Now I have to drive an extra 30 minutes every day. Yang Jian recognizes him immediately. Du Zitang, Lee Shia's childhood friend, the flashy scooter kid with the delinquent crew. His family ran an electronics factory. But things had gone downhill financially. And his dad had stopped paying attention to him, so he drifted into street life. But he'd always been good to Lee Shia. Never tried to pull her into his world. Never let her become what he became. In Yang Jian's mind, that was exactly why she could never let go of her feelings for him. He gives Du Zitang one disinterested glance, then walks away. Behind him, he hears Lee Shia stomping in frustration, muttering something sharp under her breath. He keeps walking. At the intersection, waiting for the light, he can't help it, he glances back. Lee Shia is climbing onto the back of Du Zitang's scooter. Yang Jian looks up at the glaring midday sun. It stings his eyes so badly that tears fall. He tells himself it's the light. 50 years of love, poured into one woman, it still couldn't beat a guy on a scooter she grew up with. He goes home, he takes a few days off school. He doesn't want to see her face. Doesn't wanna pretend he's fine with watching her choose someone else in real time. His dad is furious but can't push too hard. Yang Jian's mom passed away when he was young, and his dad has always spoiled him rotten. After a few days of silence, Yang Jian sits his dad down and tells him he wants to transfer schools. His dad stares at him like he just said he wanted to go live on the moon. The exams are right around the corner. Your fiancée, specifically transferred to be in your class. If you leave now, what is she supposed to do? Yang Jian waves his hand, completely unbothered. I never agreed to any of this, Dad. I don't like her. She already has some lunch she likes, and it's not me. His dad won't budge. So Yang Jian plays the one card that has never once failed to work. He looks his dad dead in the eye and says, if you keep pushing me, I'll jump off this third-floor balcony and go join Mom. The balcony is over 10 meters high. Falling headfirst would not be a good time. His dad folds instantly. Fine, I'll contact some schools. Just calm down. Yang smiles. That's my good old dad. Don't worry, once I transfer, I'll get into a top-tier university, study finance hard, and come back to help you build this business. Mom's spirit will be watching over us. His dad's so moved he pulls Yang Jian into a bear hug and cries for a good 10 minutes. Yang Jian pats his back and thinks problem solved. He goes to sleep feeling like, for once, things are under control. He wakes up the next morning to Lee Shia shoving his bedroom door open. She walks straight to his window like she owns the place, grabs the curtains, and yanks them wide open. Sunlight floods the room so hard it's practically physical. Yang Jian claps his hands over his face, furious and half-blind. Lee Shia, are you insane? This my house, this is my room, what are you doing? She looks at him with complete composure and says, your house? Your room? I lived here for 50 years. This is my house, my room. Yang Jian just stares at her. That's when it hits him, she's not wrong. In their past life after getting married, they lived in this exact house. His bedroom became their bedroom. She knows this place as well as he does. She opens his closet and starts pulling out his clothes with practiced ease, the kind of ease that only comes from 50 years of marriage. He snaps, Lee Shia, what is wrong with you? She glances at him, rubs her chin thoughtfully and smirks. So you've had this sleeping habit since back then? I always thought it started after we got married. He tells her to get out. She raises an eyebrow. Make me. What are you going to do about it? I kept you in line for 50 years. Did you really think you could escape my grasp? And she smiles at him, warm, almost playful, which somehow makes Yang Jian even angrier. In their past life he'd brought up divorce after realizing she didn't love him. She refused. Used the pregnancy as an excuse. Said their lives were set and they should just make do with it. Now God has given her a second chance to not be with him. And she's here anyway, opening his curtains at 7 in the morning. He tells her exactly what he's thinking. Lee Shia, acting like this is only going to make me disgusted with you. It will make me slowly hate you. That lands. She freezes, just for a second, something in her face. Yang Jian puts on his clothes, opens the door and walks out. And then arms wrap around him from behind. Lee Shia holds on tight and says, barely above a whisper, Yang Jian, I'm sorry. There's a question I didn't answer our past life. I'll answer it in this one. He doesn't let her finish. He pries her hands off and turns to look at her. You don't need to say it. I already knew the answer before I died. His voice is quieter now but no less certain. I loved you for 50 years and I couldn't move your heart. Please just let me go. He looks at her directly. In this life, can we just be strangers who know each other well? We're only 18, we have our whole lives ahead of us. You had regrets in your past life, so did I. Let's just spend this life making up for our own regrets, okay? Tears are streaming down her face. Lee Shia shakes her head, frantic. No. You are my husband. 50 years of love. Can you really just throw that away? Yang Jian swallows hard. If he said it didn't hurt, he'd be lying, but he refuses to make the same mistake twice. He pulls himself together. I can let it go. She wipes her eyes and when she looks up, her expression has shifted into something resolute. I know you don't believe me, but in our past life you treated me well for 50 years. In this life it's my turn to treat you well for 50 years. Yang Jian doesn't say anything to that. He walks downstairs, where his dad has made breakfast for two and is beaming, like it's a wedding morning. He ignores that, grabs a steamed bun and storms out. Lee Shia grabs a bun too and follows. He walks fast, she walks fast. He stops, she stops. He speeds up, she speeds up. For the next half-month, this is his life. She follows him everywhere. Basketball court, she sits in the sun and waits. Internet cafe, she books the PCs to tis and watches movies. Even the bathroom, she waits outside the door. The whole school has opinions about it. Rumors fly that Yang Jian must be some secret rich heir and Lee Shia is chasing after money. Why else would the top-ranked genius in school spend her days orbiting the biggest slacker in class? Lee Shia doesn't address any of it, she just shows up, every single day. And then one day she doesn't. Yang Jian goes through a whole morning, without her chattering or hovering or handing him room temperature water, and he realizes he actually notices the absence. He shakes that off, that's not important. It's the last Friday of the month, a 2-day break before the final push toward exams. Some close friends from classes want to grab dinner, nothing fancy, just a food stall with cheap food and huge portions. Since Lee Shia isn't around, Yang Jian says yes. They eat, they laugh, they stay out too late. And by 10 at night they're standing on the roadside, trying to flag down a cab. Then one of his friends taps his shoulder and points toward a hotel entrance nearby. Hey Jian, isn't that your girl, the one who's been chasing you for half a month? Yang Jian looks over. Lee Shia and Du Zitong are walking out of the hotel together, chatting and laughing. For a split second time freezes. Then Lee Shia spots him. Her face drops. She immediately rushes over, Du Zitong trailing behind her, and starts to explain. But Yang Jian's jaw's already locked. We haven't even graduated high school. And you're already stringing me along while booking a hotel room. With your childhood sweetheart? His voice is ice cold. Lee Shia, are you a hypocrite or what? I already told you I won't get in the way of you and him. So why are you still pestering me? A taxi pulls up right at that moment. Yang Jian flags it, gets in and tells the driver to move. He stares out the window as the car pulls away. And despite everything, despite all the anger, all the resolution, all 50 years of loving a woman, who never said she loved him back, a tear slides down his face. When he gets home, he doesn't explain to his dad. He doesn't need to. His face says it all. He tells his dad he wants to take a trip and he'll come back in time for the exams. His dad looks at him for a long moment. Yang Jian buys a plane ticket to the coast. His dad once told him that Yang Jian's mother, who passed away far too young, had one wish she never got to fulfill. She wanted to go to the beach. She wanted to see the ocean. Yang Jian takes his mom's urn, boards an overnight flight to Haikou, and starts traveling through the coastal cities. He moves from city to city, carrying that urn, until he reaches Shanghai, the city his mother was originally from. She had left here for love, marrying his dad and moving far from home. And the Yang family cosmetics company had always been shaped by her taste, her spirit, her memory. That was why Yang Jian's dad had always dreamed of taking those products to the global market. It was a promise to her. At dusk, Yang Jian sits on the beach, holding the urn, watching the sun go down over the water. Not far away, a mother and teenage son are sitting in bamboo chairs by the shoreline. The boy looks about 15-16, face puffy from crying. He asks his mom, "Why doesn't the girl I like me back? Is there anyone in this world who would ever like me?" His mom pats his head and smiles, "Silly boy, when I first met you I was just a girl in my 20s myself." Yang Jian hears that, and something in his chest just breaks open. If his mom had known he spent his entire life, his whole first life, loving a woman who couldn't love him back, she would have been heartbroken. He can't hold it in anymore. Tears and everything else come pouring out of him right there on the beach, in front of strangers, in front of the ocean his mother always wanted to see. "Mom, what did I do wrong? I loved her for 50 years. 50 years. Is her heart really made of stone? Does someone like me really not deserve to be loved?" He hugs the urn against his chest, tears falling onto it, and cries harder than he has in either of his lives. And then another voice joins his, crying, real gasping, heartbroken crying. Another pair of hands reaches out and wraps around the urn in his arms. "Mom, don't worry. In this life I will take good care of Yang Jian, I swear it." Yang Jian turns his head. Lee Shia. She is holding onto the urn with both hands, tears streaming down her face, completely undone. He instinctively tries to stand up to put distance between them again, but she throws her arms around him and holds on. "Yang Jian, give me a chance. Just listen to me, okay? Once I'm done, if you still want to leave, I promise I will never bother you again." I'm not lying. Something in the steadiness of her voice, the desperation of her grip, makes him go still. He stays. Lee Shia pulls herself together enough to speak. With red eyes and a steady voice, she starts talking. "Yang Jian, I know you always thought I had feelings for Du Zitong, in our past life. In this one too, but you are dead wrong." He said nothing, she pressed on. "I never once said I liked him. I don't even know where you heard that from. Yes, Diding and I grew up together. But who says you have to fall in love with your childhood friend? In our past life, I didn't like you at first. Not because of you, but because I didn't want to be used as a bargaining chip in my dad's business deals. That's why I was cold to you. That's why I shut you out. But then things changed. After I got pregnant, didn't you notice? I started treating you differently. When you brought up divorce, I refused. I was being stubborn." "Yes, but that stubbornness had a reason. I had fallen in love with you." Yang Jian stares at the horizon. He doesn't speak. She keeps going. "Managing both our family's companies was crushing me. I was flying abroad for violin performances on top of everything. I came home every night exhausted down to the bone. I knew you treated me well, I knew it, but when I finally made it back through the door, I had nothing left to give. I just needed to lie down and disappear for a few hours. And those gifts, the expensive jewelry, the designer bags, I never asked for any of that. Couldn't you tell?" She pauses. "Didn't you notice that the ring and bracelet I always wore were the ones you bought me, the very first time we went shopping together?" Yang Jian goes still. He thinks back. Both their families were wealthy. He had bought her jewelry worth millions over the years, designer bags, luxury everything. But she had always worn the cheap ones. The ones from a street stall on their first date together. Always. He had never noticed until right now. Lee Shia's voice goes quiet. "Over those decades, spending all that time together, even an iceberg would melt. And you weren't just any man, you were relentless, with how well you treated me. Before you died, you asked me if I had ever loved you. I hesitated, but that hesitation wasn't because I didn't love you. I'm just bad at saying it. I've always been stubborn, even when we were old. I was trying to figure out how to say it. I was, and then you left." Her voice breaks completely. She starts weakly hitting his chest, crying hard. "Who told you to die so fast? How could you die without my permission? You died before I even had a chance to say it. I wanted to tell you that I love you. I really, really love you. I, Lee Shia, love you. Yang Jian." She says it out loud, fully on the beach in front of the setting sun. "The day you died, I cried all night. I cried until I fell asleep, and when I woke up I had been reborn. In this life I wasn't going to wait for you to come find me. I was going to come to you, but you kept yelling at me and glaring at me. You were so cold. It wasn't until that day after basketball practice that I realized you had been reborn too." Yang Xia sits in silence for a long moment. She isn't finished. "I know you were exhausted in our past life because of me. But do you think I wasn't tired? I gave you 2 sons and 2 daughters. I managed the Yang family company alongside everything else. Couldn't you be even a little more understanding?" And then she runs out of words entirely, throws herself against his chest, and cries like she hasn't cried in 50 years. Yang Jian sits with her weight against him, and thinks back slowly, carefully, over everything he thought he knew. She was always cold to him, yes, but she was also always there. When the Lee family became an industry giant, she never forgot to pull the Yang family up with them. She raised 4 children, she ran businesses, she protected everyone around her. She wore his cheap street stall jewelry for 50 years. The picture he had carried of her, the icy, loveless woman who never cared, starts to crack around the edges. He lets out a long breath and gently pats her back. She calms down slowly, unevenly, until finally she looks up at him. Her eyes are red and puffy and completely honest. She tells him about the hotel. That time you saw Tang and me leaving together, it wasn't what you thought. His grandparents came from the countryside to visit, and there wasn't enough room at his house. I helped them book a hotel room. Tang just came along to see them in, and then she says something that stops Jian entirely. Dieting and I have always just been friends. We grew up together, but there were never any romantic feelings. He has always seen me as an older sister, nothing more. If you don't believe me, come back to my hometown with me right now. My parents, my childhood friends, they all know the truth. Jian hesitates. Lee Shia pulls out her phone and makes a call. Get your butt over here right now. And Tang, who has apparently been crouching behind a nearby trash can this entire time, pops up and comes jogging over. Lee Shia tightens her grip on Jian's arm, claiming her territory with zero subtlety, and points at him. Call him brother-in-law. Tang, visibly a little scared of her, immediately says, hey, brother-in-law. Jian blinks. Tang then explains, look, she is basically the only reason I haven't completely gone off the rails. If it wasn't for her keeping me in check all these years, I wouldn't just be a flashy scooter guy. I'd be a full-blown street thug. And also, he adds, a little shyly, he already has someone he likes. The daughter of a KTV owner he frequents. They're the same age. They've been together for a while, and they've promised to get married when they're old enough. Jian's mind snaps back to ephemery. When Tang got married, Lee Shia had asked Jian to go to the wedding with her. He'd refused out of jealousy and spite, and the bride had been exactly that girl, the KTV owner's daughter. The owner had resisted at first, not wanting her daughter with a dropout, so Tang had gone back to school, fought his way into a second-tier college, and proven himself. Everything slots into place. The story Jian had told himself for 50 years, that Lee Shia's heart always belonged to someone else, was a story he had built out of rumors he never bothered to check, a knot he had carried in his chest for 5 decades, and it just unravels. Lee Shia looks at him with steady eyes. In this life, I'm not going to touch the violin. I just want to fulfill our dad's dream together, take our mom's cosmetics to the global market. Jian, will you give me that chance? He stands up. He picks up his mom's urn and walks toward the hotel. After a few steps, he realizes Lee Shia isn't beside him. He glances back. She's standing where he left her, staring at his back with an unreadable look on her face. He pauses, then calls back to her, let's go back to the room. It's freezing at the beach at night, don't catch a cold. Lee Shia's face transforms. Pure, unguarded, brilliant joy. She runs to his side and hugs his arm, resting her head on his shoulder. And for the first time in either of their lives, it feels exactly right. Tang, completely shameless, trots up behind them. Sis, brother-in-law, my ID isn't old enough to book a room yet. You two have a room, but what about me? Lee Shia points to a spot in the distance without even looking at him. There's a bridge over there. You can make do under it. It's the most important night for me and your brother-in-law. You're on your own. She drags Jian toward the hotel before he can say anything. Behind them, Tang stands alone on the beach, genuinely considering the bridge. And somehow, for the first time in this second life, Jian is laughing. The weeks that follow are nothing like anything Jian experienced in his first life. Lee Shia shows up to study with him every evening, and whatever wall had existed between them before is completely gone. She knows everything he doesn't, every concept that tied him in knots, every exam pattern, every trick the college entrance tests are known for. And he knows what she doesn't, the future. The business landscape, where the real opportunities are going to come from. They are, without either of them planning it, a perfect team. The final stretch before the exams is still brutal. 3 months is not enough time to fully undo 18 years of class and playing basketball instead of studying. Jian knows this. He doesn't need to score at the very top. He just needs to do better than his past self, the version of him who stumbled into a third-rate college and spent decades regretting it. He studies harder than he ever has. She tutors him through the worst of it, patient in a way she never was in their past life, or maybe she was always like this, and he just never got to see it. The exam comes. Jian sits down, breathes out slowly and writes. When the results come back, he holds the admission letter in his hand and actually laughs at himself. He didn't get into a top-tier school. He got into a solid first-tier one, respectable, decent, a genuine step up from where he landed last time. Not perfect, but real. And with only 3 months of effort against 50 years of bad study habits, Honestly, it's more than fair. He had Lee Shia to thank for even that. Without her tutoring him through the final weeks, he'd probably have landed in a second-tier school at best. As for Lee Shia, she got first place in the city. First place. In their past life, she'd placed third, and only because the news of the arranged marriage had thrown her life into chaos right before the exams. In this life she studied in a good mood, she slept well, she was happy. And happiness, it turns out, looks good on Lee Shia. It looks incredible, actually. She could have written her own ticket to the top universities in the country, the most prestigious schools, the most competitive programs, the best possible launch into the future. She didn't. She chose the same school as Jian. When he found out, he looked at her with something complicated in his expression: gratitude, disbelief, and something softer underneath. She kissed his cheek and smiled at him. In this life, I'll give you 2 more kids. How does that sound? Jian looked at the admission letters in his hand, then looked at her. He had loved this woman for 50 years in his first life and never heard her say she loved him until it was too late. And now here she was choosing him first, before anything else, before the best schools, and the highest rankings, and everything the world said she should want. He nodded slowly. I had loved you for 50 years, he thought. What's another 50? But let's go back for a moment, because this story isn't just about second chances and beach confessions. It's about everything Jian misunderstood for half a century. The ring, the bracelet, the cheap ones from the street stall. He had bought her millions of dollars worth of luxury over their decades together, and she had quietly worn the cheapest things he ever gave her, the ones from their very first shopping trip, every single day. He never asked why. He assumed it meant she didn't value what he gave her. He assumed she didn't value him, but she wore them for 50 years. That's not indifference, that's devotion, quiet, stubborn, completely impossible to read if you don't know to look. And Jian, for all his love, never looked. Not really. He saw for what he feared, a woman who didn't love him, and he built his whole understanding of her around that fear. She, in turn, was so exhausted, so stretched thin across businesses and children and performances and family obligations, that she never once stopped to explain herself. 2 people who loved each other, 50 years, 0 conversations that mattered, and it took dying, and being reborn, and a beach at sunset, and a whole lot of crying for both of them to actually talk. There's something almost painfully funny about that, and something genuinely heartbreaking, because they didn't waste 50 years, because they didn't love each other. They wasted 50 years because neither of them knew how to say it. Jian, meanwhile, has a plan for this that he's already started putting into motion. He knows what the future holds, which industries are going to explode, which markets are going to open up, where the Yang family cosmetics company can find its footing on the international stage. His dad spent his whole first life chasing that dream and never quite got there. Jian watched him work himself into the ground for it. In this life, he's going to make it happen. He's going to study finance properly, not out of obligation, not because his family expected it, but because he actually understands now what it means to build something that lasts. And he's going to do it with 50 years of knowledge that nobody else in the world has. The business partnership between the Yang family and the Lee family still stands. Jian made sure of that, one of the first things he'd been clear about, even when he was still trying to push Lee Shia away, because he always knew the Lee family was going to grow into something massive. He always knew the partnership was worth keeping. He just also always knew he didn't need to marry Lee Shia to secure it. As it turns out, he was going to marry her anyway, not because of a business deal, not because his dad arranged it, not because 2 families needed each other, because a woman who spent 50 years being cold to him had actually been quietly, stubbornly in love with him the whole time. And this time around, she was going to say it, out loud on a beach, holding his mother's urn, which, if you think about it, is the most Lee Shia possible way for any of this to happen. She doesn't do anything simply or softly, she never did. She barged into his bedroom. She followed him everywhere for 2 weeks. She dragged Du Zitang out from behind a trash can as a character witness. She sat in the sun outside a basketball court, waiting for him, because she had decided he was worth waiting for, and nobody, not him, not the school, not the universe, was going to tell her differently. In their past life, Jian poured everything he had into a woman he thought didn't love him. In this life, he gets to find out what happens when she pours it back. Let's talk about Du Zitang for a second, because he deserves more credit than he gets in this story. This is a guy who grew up without much parental guidance, drifted into street life, became the kind of flashy scooter punk that makes teachers nervous, and yet, he never dragged Lee Shia down with him, not once, in 2 lifetimes. He always kept her separate from the worst parts of his world. And when the girl he loved, the KTV owner's daughter, needed him to be more, he went back to school. He earned it. In Yangjian's first life, he was too consumed by jealousy to go to Du Zitang's wedding. He sat home and stewed while Lee Shia went alone. He had turned a man who was essentially Lee Shia's devoted little brother into a rival, in his own head, and spent 50 years resenting someone who had never actually wanted what he had. In this life, Du Zitong called him brother-in-law on the beach, and got stuck sleeping under a bridge, which is honestly a more fitting dynamic. There's also something worth noting about Lee Shia's father. The rumor in Yang Jian's first life was that the Lee family had torn Lee Shia and her childhood sweetheart apart to force her into the marriage with him. He believed that rumor completely. He carried it like a wound for 50 years. He never once asked her about it. He never asked because he was afraid of the answer. And the answer, it turns out, was that the rumor wasn't really true, or at least, not in the way he understood it. Lee Shia's resistance to the marriage wasn't about a forbidden love affair with Du Zitong. It was about not wanting to be used as a piece in someone else's game. She didn't want to be a tool for her family's business alliances. That's what she resented. That's why she went cold. The man she eventually fell for was Yang Jian himself, slowly, quietly, stubbornly. Over years of shared life and 4 children and cheap street stall jewelry, he just never knew. Now Reborn, he knows, and she's not waiting around for him to figure it out this time. She showed up on day 1. She sat next to him in class. She brought him water after basketball. She followed him around for 2 weeks. She got on a plane and chased him to a beach in Shanghai. Lee Shia does not do subtle. What she does is relentless. It's a little terrifying and also, honestly, a little beautiful. Yang Jian knew this woman for 50 years and somehow completely misread her. In fairness, she didn't make it easy. She's the first to admit she's bad at expressing herself, that she's always been stubborn, that she came home too tired to give him what he deserved. She's not making excuses, she's explaining. There's a difference. And the fact that she's explaining at all, that she came to that beach, instead of just letting him go, says everything. In the first life, neither of them ever fought for the relationship. He suffered in silence, gave and gave and gave, and never once demanded anything in return. She shut down and pushed forward and assumed he understood, because he was always there. So how could he not understand? And at the end of 70 years of living, there was a deathbed question that neither of them had answered honestly in time. In the second life, she demanded everything. She showed up, made noise, made scenes, made him uncomfortable, refused to be ignored, and eventually dragged the truth out into the open on a beach at sunset. That's not the approach most people would take. But Lee Shia has never been most people. The college entrance exams are behind them now. The admission letters are in hand. The future, their second future, is just beginning. Yang Jian thinks about his dad. In his first life, his dad worked himself into the ground trying to build the company up, trying to take his wife's cosmetics brand global. And he never quite made it. He died with that dream still unfinished. Yang Jian is not letting that happen again. He has 50 years of future knowledge. He knows which markets open up. He knows what trends come. He knows what works and what doesn't. He's going to study finance with actual focus and actual intent, not just because his family expected it. And this time he won't be doing it alone. Because Lee Shia said something on that beach that settled in his chest like a promise. In this life, I'm not going to touch the violin. I just want to fulfill our dad's dream and take our mom's cosmetics to the global market. Our dad, our mom. She said it that way. Not your dad's dream, ours. In 50 years of marriage, she had pulled the Yang family up alongside her own family's rise without being asked to. She had never stopped being on his side. He just couldn't see it through all the silence between them. Now there's no silence. Now she's sitting next to him in class in the same university. By choice, with 50 years of business knowledges and the drive of someone who spent a whole lifetime regretting the things she never said. They are going to be absolutely terrifying in the business world, and they both know it. There's one more thing worth sitting with before we get to the end of this story. Yang Jian's mom. She's present in this whole story even though she died long before any of it began. She's in the cosmetics company, in the products that were shaped by her taste, her sense of beauty, the things she loved. She's in Yang Jian's dad, who spent decades trying to honor her by taking what she built to the world. And she's in that urn Yang Jian carried across the coast of China, to the city she was born in, to the ocean she always wanted to see. When Lee Shia showed up on that beach and put her hands on that urn and made a promise to a woman she never met, she wasn't performing. She was asking permission. And she was making a commitment that had nothing to do with business partnerships or family arrangements or anything practical at all. She was saying, I know what I cost him. I know what I took from him without meaning to, and I am going to spend the rest of this life making it right. Yang Jian heard that. He heard it in his bones. That's why he stood up. That's why he walked toward the hotel. That's why he looked back when she didn't follow and told her not to catch a cold. He wasn't forgiving her. He was choosing her again with open eyes this time. There's a version of this story where Yang Jian gets reborn, stays cold, keeps his distance, and spends his second life building an empire completely alone. He had every reason to do exactly that. 50 years of love with nothing returned. A deathbed question answered with silence. A second chance to walk away clean. But then a girl showed up and sat next to him in class despite being publicly rejected. Brought him water after basketball. Followed him to a beach across the country. And told him out loud that she loved him. And it turned out the story he had been telling himself, the story of a woman who never cared, was never the true one. The true story was two people who loved each other and never learned to say it until the very end of the first time. And the second time, she wasn't going to wait for the end. A few months later, Jian is sitting with two admission letters in his hand, one for him and one for her, both to the same school. He should feel embarrassed about his results. A first-tier school isn't exactly the top-tier dream he set out to achieve, but he doesn't feel embarrassed. He feels, maybe for the first time in either of his lives, like things actually went the way they were supposed to. Lee Shia sits beside him. She kisses his cheek. In this life I'll give you 2 more kids. How does that sound? He thinks about 4 children who stood in a hazy room at the end of his first life. He thinks about 50 years of mornings and dinners and business decisions and a woman who wore cheap jewelry and never once explained why. He thinks about a beach at sunset and a mother's urn and a girl who cried so hard she couldn't breathe, promising a dead woman she would take care of her son, and he nods. Sounds perfect, he thinks, because he had loved this woman for 50 years, and she had loved him back quietly, stubbornly, imperfectly for just as long, and now they both knew it. What's another 50? The thing about being reborn is that you don't get to erase the pain of the first life. You carry it with you. It's baked into who you are now. Jian is 18 years old with the emotional weight of a 70-year-old man. He knows what it feels like to give everything and receive nothing in return, or to believe he received nothing, which turns out to be just as damaging. He knows what it feels like to die with questions unanswered. He knows what his dad's face looks like when a dream goes unrealized for decades. That knowledge isn't a burden anymore. It's the thing that makes him different. In his first life he was a man who loved deeply and communicated not at all. He gave gifts and gestures and decades of devotion, but he never once sat down and said, "I need to know if you love me. I need you to tell me." He assumed her silence was her answer. He was wrong. In this second life, he doesn't have to make that mistake again, and Lee Shia is not making it for him. She said it. Fully. On a beach in Shanghai in front of his mom's urn and a setting sun and a very confused Du Zitong hiding behind a trash can, she said, "I love you, Jian," and she meant it with everything she had. That's the thing about Lee Shia. When she commits completely. She committed to coldness for years in their first life, and even then she wore his jewelry. She kept his children. She built his family's business right alongside her own. That's not a woman who didn't care. That's a woman who didn't know how to let you see that she did. Now she knows. Now he knows. And they are both going to be insufferably devoted to each other, which is as honestly what they both deserved from the start. Du Zitang's future, for what it's worth, is looking pretty good. He's going to go back to school. He's going to clean up his act for the girl he loves. He's going to call Jian brother-in-law for the rest of his life, and probably end up at every family dinner whether he's invited or not. And Jian, who spent 50 years in his first life unable to stomach even thinking about this guy, is going to have to look at Du Zitang's face at every holiday gathering and feel completely, embarrassingly fine about it. Character growth. It's beautiful. The Yang family cosmetics company is going to take a different trajectory in this second life, with Jian's future knowledge guiding the business decisions, and Lee Shia's incredible instincts and work ethic backing everything up. The international expansion that Jian's dad could never quite achieve is going to happen. Not immediately, not overnight. These things take time even when you know what's coming, but it's going to happen. Jian's dad is going to see his wife's dream fulfilled before he's old. He's going to see her products reach the world, and somewhere Jian believes his mom is going to see it too. That's what makes this second chance mean somethings beyond just the romance. It's not just Jian and Lee Shia getting it right this time. It's a son giving his dad back something that was taken from him. It's a family carrying a woman's memory forward the way she always deserved. It's 50 years of accumulated regret being transformed, slowly and deliberately, into something worth keeping. There's a moment earlier in this story that keeps coming back. Jian is at an intersection, waiting for the light, and he glances back to see Lee Shia climbing onto Du Zitang's scooter. He looks up at the midday sun. It stings his eyes so much tears fall. He tells himself it's the sun. He knows it isn't the sun. That's the moment he really understood, not just intellectually, but in his gut, that he still loved her, even knowing everything. Even with 50 years of evidence in his head telling him she didn't love him back, he still loved her. Because love doesn't work on logic. It doesn't care about evidence or outcomes or what makes practical sense. Jian loved Lee Shia because he loved her. Full stop. 50 years and a whole reincarnation didn't change that. And the tragedy of their first life, and also the miracle of their second, is that she loved him too. She just needed the universe to hit the reset button and give her a second chance to actually say it. The second chance she took with both hands and never let go of. So here's where we land. Yang Jian is 18 years old. He has a university acceptance letter, a business plan built on 50 years of future knowledge, and a father who is going to cry when he finds out his son has finally started taking life seriously. He has Lee Shia's stubborn, brilliant, relentless, impossible Lee Shia sitting next to him, choosing the same school, making plans for a shared future that she is absolutely going to steamroll him into agreeing with at least 50% of the time. He has a friendship with Du Zitong that neither of them would have predicted, built on a trash can confession and a beachside bridge joke that Zitong is never going to live down. He has his mom's urn, now returned to its resting place after seeing the ocean she always dreamed of, and he has a second life, a full, real, honest one, built on the wreckage and the wisdom of the first. If you asked Yang Jian at 70 what he would do differently if he could live again, he would probably tell you he'd speak up sooner, ask the hard questions earlier, demand answers, push through the silence instead of building a life inside it. He'd tell you that loving someone is not the same as making sure they know it, and he'd tell you that assuming someone doesn't love you is not the same as them not loving you. These are lessons that cost him 50 years the first time around. He's not paying that price again. None of this was easy, by the way. Let's not make it sound tidier than it was. Yang Jian came back furious and heartbroken and absolutely convinced he was done. He bought the most childish toys he could find. He moved to the desk by the trash can. He told her clearly in front of witnesses that he had zero interest in her. He got on a plane and flew to the other side of the country to cry on a beach by himself. And even then she followed him there. That's the part that matters. She showed up to every single wall he put up and just waited. Or knocked. Or barged straight through with her characteristic complete disregard for whatever he thought he wanted. Lee Shia decided he was hers, and Lee Shia, once she decides something, does not negotiate. Yang Jian didn't stand a chance, honestly, in the best possible way. The final exams are over, the admission letters are real. The future is genuinely properly open. For the first time in either of their lives, they are starting something together. Not because his business deal required it, not because families arranged it, not because a pregnancy made retreat impossible. They're starting it because they chose each other, both of them, with eyes wide open. Yang Jian had asked on his deathbed if she had ever loved him for even a single day. She hesitated. He took that hesitation as a no. He died thinking she never loved him. He was wrong. She hesitated because she was bad at saying it always had been, always would be, and she was trying, in those last moments, to find the right words for something she had felt for most of their life together. She ran out of time, so she came back. That is the most romantic and most heartbreaking thing about this whole story. She got reborn so she could answer his question, and the answer, in case there was any doubt, was yes. Yes, she loved him. She loved him in cheap jewelry and stubborn silences and 50 years of showing up even when she was too tired to show up well. She loved him in the way she wore his gifts and kept his family and refused to let him divorce her even when he asked. She loved him in the way she got on a plane to chase him to Shanghai and cried on a beach and promised his mom she would take care of him this time. She loved him the whole time. He just needed a second life to find out. And maybe that's the whole point. Not every love story announces itself. Some of them are written in the quiet spaces, in the things people do instead of what they say, in the choices they make when nobody's watching, in the jewelry worn for 50 years that nobody ever thought to ask about. The afternoon Yang Jian holds both admission letters in his hand, side by side. He feels something he hasn't felt in either of his lives. Peaceful. Ready. Not because everything is perfect, it won't be. They are still them, which means there will be arguments and stubbornness, and probably more moments of him slamming a book on a desk and her yanking curtains open at 7 in the morning. But now they both know the thing that matters. They know they are chosen. Deliberately, consciously, without any business deal or family pressure or debt of obligation behind it. Just two people who loved each other for 50 years, without knowing it was mutual, given a second chance to get it right. Lee Shia leans her head on his shoulder. He lets her. Outside, the world is exactly the same as it was yesterday. Same campus. Same city. Same future they're both going to have to build from scratch. But it feels completely different. Yang Jian thinks about his dad, about the look on his dad's face when his son finally tells him, "I'm going to take mom's comp global, I promise, not tamsit. I mean it." He thinks about his mom, whose urn he carried to the ocean she always dreamed of, and the quiet peace that settled over him when the sun went down and the waves came in and he cried everything out. He thinks about 50 years, the first 50, and all the joy that was hiding inside them, that neither of them could see past their own silence. And he thinks about the next 50. And all the things he already knows are coming: the businesses, the family, the children, the life they are going to build together with their eyes open. And their words actually spoken out loud this time. He is ready for all of it. Lee Shia shifts against his shoulder, tilts her head up to look at him. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. The girl who was always bad at expressing herself is getting better at it. He can see it in the way she looks at him, like he's something she's been searching for, and finally found. He looks back at her the same way. This is what 50 years of love looks like when you stop hiding it. Not grand gestures, not expensive jewelry, not 1,000 gifts from a street stall. Well, okay, maybe some gifts from a street stall. Just two people sitting with their admission letters and their ridiculous, complicated, deeply earned second chance. The Yang family cosmetics company is going to reach the world. Yang Jian is going to study finance and mean it. Lee Shia is going to put down the violin and pick up a different kind of future. Du Zitong is going to sleep under that bridge and never let either of them forget it. And somewhere between studying for exams and building a business and figuring out how to say the things that need to be said, they are going to be happy. Genuinely, thoroughly, completely happy. Not because the second life is easy, but because this time, they're not going through it alone. That's the thing Yang Jian didn't have in his first life. Not really. He had a wife, he had a family, he had a company and a home and 50 years of shared history. But he didn't have a partner, not the kind that really counts. He had someone beside him who he desperately wanted to let him in. But she didn't know how. And he didn't ask. And they just existed in the same space for 5 decades, without ever closing the gap between them. In this life, the gap is already closed. It closed on a beach at sunset with an urn and a lot of tears, and the most honest conversation either of them had ever had in 2 combined lifetimes. Yang Jian died at 70 asking if he had ever been loved. He gets to spend the rest of his second life knowing the answer is yes. Unambiguously, stubbornly, completely yes. That's enough, more than enough. That's everything. The bus stop where she grabbed him, the basketball court where she waited in the sun, the taxi he got into without looking back, the beach where she finally found him. Every single moment he spent trying to run led right back to her, which in retrospect is about the most Lee Shia outcome possible. She told him once, "I kept you in line for 50 years. Did you really think you could escape my grasp?" At the time it made him furious. Now, sitting with her head on his shoulder and both their futures in his hand, it just makes him laugh. She was right. She was always right. She was just never going to tell him that directly unless she's absolutely had to. Welcome to the rest of their lives. 2 reincarnated people with a combined 100 years of experience between them, setting off into a future they have already lived once, and are determined to live better this time. They know the pitfalls, they know the arguments, they know where the silence grows, and how dangerous it gets when you let it. They are not going to let it. They are going to talk, actually talk, and it is going to be uncomfortable and imperfect, and occasionally involve some slamming a book on a desk. But it is going to be real, and that, more than anything else, is the gift of the second chance. Not the knowledge of the future, not the business advantage, not the exam results or the university admissions. The real gift is knowing what went wrong the first time and choosing deliberately to do something different. Yang Jian knows what went wrong, Lee Shia knows what went wrong, and they have both, in their own ways, made their promises to each other, to his mom, to the version of their first life that didn't get to end any better than it did. The promises are going to be kept, not because they're perfect people, they're very clearly not, but because they have been given something rare, and they both know it. A do-over, a clean slate built on everything they already know, the chance to love each other the right way, out loud, from the beginning. Yang Jian looks at the admission letters one more time. His name, the same school. She chose him, over the best universities in the country, over everything the world said she should want. She chose him first. He had waited 50 years in his first life for her to choose him first, and she did. She just needed to be reborn to get there. He sets the letters down and looks at her. She's already looking back, and without either of them saying anything, everything that needed to be said has been said. They both know. They have always known. It just took 50 years and a second life to admit it. Yang Jian closes his eyes for just a second, and in the darkness behind them, he can almost feel something settle. The question he asked on his deathbed, the one that haunted him right up until the moment he woke up young again, finally has its answer. She always loved him. And in this life he is never going to have to wonder, because she is right here, and she is not going anywhere, and she will tell him in her own way, stubborn and imperfect and completely herself every single day. The admission letters sit on the table between them. Outside, the world keeps going unchanged, unknowing, completely unaware that 2 people have been given the rarest gift the universe has to offer, the chance to fix what was broken, the chance to say what was left unsaid, the chance to love each other, the way they always should have, openly, honestly, without waiting until it was too late. Yang Jian breathes out slowly. Lee Shia shifts her head on his shoulder, getting comfortable. Du Zitang is probably fine. The bridge was pretty solid looking. The sun is going down somewhere, just like it went down on that beach in Shanghai. But this time, they're watching it together. And when it rises again tomorrow, they'll both be there for that too. Yang Jian had spent 50 years loving a woman and dying without knowing if she loved him back. He had been given one more life, one more chance, one more shot at the story he should have had. And this time against the odds, against his own stubbornness, against 50 years of accumulated hurt that he had every right to hold on to, he chose her again. Not out of habit, not out of obligation, not because the families needed the deal or because the business required the alliance, because she came to a beach in Shanghai and told him she loved him and meant every single word of it, and that was enough. That was more than enough. 50 years of loving someone who loved you back the whole time, and neither of you knew how to say it. That's the story of Yang Jian and Lee Shia, two people who needed to die and be reborn, just to have the conversation they should have had on day one, and in their second life, beginning right now, they are finally, completely, irreversibly having it.